It began with a sound no one heard, a silence so complete that even the forest seemed to hold its breath. They say the class of '99 left their school that morning with the kind of energy only teenagers have. Loud voices, half-zipped backpacks, shoes thudding on bus steps, and dreams bigger than their small town could hold. But if anyone had been watching closely, really watching, they would have noticed something strange. The birds near the tree line weren't singing. The wind wasn't moving the leaves. It was as if the world itself was warning them. But the warning came too late. As the bus rolled into the outskirts of the forest, the children playfully tapped on windows, pointing at squirrels and sunlight peeking through the trees. The driver, a quiet middle-aged man known for humming country tunes, didn't hum that day. His eyes stayed locked on the road ahead, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel every mile deeper they went. Minutes later, the radio crackled, then died. The engine gave a soft grumble, like a breath drawn in fear. And then the bus simply disappeared. No smoke, no crash, no skid marks. Just silence swallowing sound. Parents waited. Teachers reassured. Everyone assumed the bus had taken a wrong turn. Then hours passed. Then night fell. And when the first search team entered the woods, something about the air felt wrong. Heavy, like humidity mixed with a heartbeat. They found nothing, not even the faint smell of gasoline. It was as if the forest had inhaled the entire bus. For 22 years, the story haunted the town like a ghost that refused to rest. Every anniversary, someone reported lights between the trees, or a yellow shape glimpsed behind the fog. But every search ended the same way. Silence, thick and suffocating. Then last month, a lone hiker, a man who didn't believe in stories, wandered into a part of the forest no map had ever named. He said he didn't hear the bus. He felt it. He described the sensation as a vibration under the earth, a pulse that led him like a rope around his chest. And when he pushed through the dense wall of vines, he froze. There it was, a school bus, half-eaten by moss. Windows draped in hanging roots, like the forest had grown eyelids over them. But the color, faint patches of yellow, still showed through the dirt as if the bus had been waiting to be recognized. He approached slowly, every step louder than the forest around him. The door hung open, swinging gently without wind. Inside, the air was cold, unnaturally cold, like stepping into a room abandoned by time itself. Moss-covered seats, broken glass, torn fabric, but everything arranged as if no one had ever left. A backpack lay open on the floor, a pencil still sharp inside. A shoe sat neatly under a seat, untouched by rot. Then he found the notebook on the first page. June 13th, 1999. On the last, a smeared line of words. Impossible to fully read, except for one word. Perfectly clear. Listen. He didn't say long enough to understand what that meant. He ran. He reported the bus. And within hours, the entire area was sealed off by authorities who refused to explain anything. No public statement, no press conference, no denial, just silence, the same silence that swallowed the class 22 years earlier. But the hiker said something else, something he only whispered. He said that as he walked away. The forest behind him made a sound, soft, rhythmic, uneven, like children knocking on glass. And that's where the real story begins, because the investigators who entered the bus that night never released their report. But one officer leaked a single detail. At the very back of the bus, beneath layers of vines, they found something impossible to describe without. Shaking, not bones, not bodies, not ghosts. Something that looked like the forest had tried to recreate the children, as if it remembered them, as if it didn't want to let them go, as if the forest itself was keeping them alive in its own way. And the officer's final words before he vanished from the department were simple. They never left the bus. Not really. The investigation team expected decay, dust, maybe the faint trace of old tragedy, but not movement. When they stepped into the bus that night, their boots sank slightly into the moss-covered floor, as if the ground beneath them was breathing. One of the officers, a veteran who had seen everything from forest fires to missing person cases, whispered that the air inside felt too alive, like walking into a room full of invisible eyes. His flashlight flickered the moment he aimed it toward the back, but the others pushed forward, convinced it was just bad wiring or moisture. The deeper they went, the more the forest's grip tightened. Vines curled around the metal bars, tiny roots threaded through the seat cushions, leaves sprouted from cracks in the windows. Every surface looked grown, not abandoned. It was as though the bus hadn't been left to rot. It had been absorbed. Then came the sound, not loud, not clear. Just a faint, rhythmic tapping, like fingertips brushing the inside of a hollow object. One of the officers called out, thinking maybe an animal was trapped inside. But then the tapping stopped instantly, as if it had been listening. A rookie officer, trembling, aimed his flashlight at a cluster of vines hanging from the ceiling. At first, it looked like nothing but tangled roots. Then he stepped closer and saw a shape beneath them, a curve of bone, a faint outline of fingers. He tore away a handful of vines and gasped that it wasn't a skeleton, it was something between a skeleton and a plant, like the forest had grown its own version of a child. From memory, from soil, from whatever it had consumed 22 years before. Fragile, pale, with vines threaded through the ribcage like veins. The skull was tilted slightly upward, almost as if it had been waiting for someone to uncover it. Its empty eye socket stared into the beam of the flashlight, and then the tapping began again. This time, louder, closer, the officers froze. The sound was coming from the back row. One officer, the same veteran who sensed something was wrong, slowly lifted his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, shaking in his hand, until it illuminated the final row of seats, and there they were, figures. Dozens of them, leaning forward, heads tilted, motionless, except for one, a shape sitting upright, small, human-sized, covered in moss and leaves, but unmistakably formed like a child. Its hand rested on the window glass, fingers gently tapping, tap, 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 slow, steady, like a message. The rookie stepped backward, his voice cracking. What is it doing? No one answered him. No one could, because just then, the tapping stopped and something else happened. Something even stranger. The window next to the tapping hand fogged up. Not from weather. Not from cold. From breath. A thin, slow exhale spread across the glass. One of the officers whispered, "It's alive." But the veteran officer shook his head. His voice was barely audible. "No, it's remembering." Before anyone could react, a deep vibration rolled through the bus, not from outside, but from within. Like the entire structure had a heartbeat. The vines tightened, leaves shivered, dust rose from the seats as though disturbed by invisible movement. The tapping figures all leaned forward, their hollow faces turned toward the officers in unison, and then the notebook on the floor flipped open on its own. Its pages fluttered violently until it stopped at a single line. A line no one wanted to read. We didn't get lost. We were taken. The rookie bolted toward the door, but the entrance had already sealed, vines twisting like fingers, pulling tight across the frame. The veteran shouted for radios, but they crackled with nothing but static, followed by a faint whisper beneath it. Children laughing, but not joyful laughter, echoing, distant, looping. Like a memory trapped inside the trees. The temperature dropped. Their breaths turned white. Something moved beneath the floor, shifting the vines like something crawling underneath, and then all at once, the tapping stopped, the vines loosened, The door released. The officers ran, stumbling into the trees, gasping, refusing to look back. But as they reached the clearing's edge, the veteran turned one last time and froze. Shapes inside the bus were no longer leaning forward. They were all turned toward the forest, like they were watching something move behind the trees. Something the officers couldn't see. When they returned with backup hours later, the bus was empty. No figures. No notebook. No vines. Just an abandoned metal shell. As if the forest had taken everything back. And that's when the investigators realized the truth. The bus didn't disappear 22 years ago. It returns when the forest wants it to. The search teams didn't sleep that night, not because they were tired, but because every man who stepped foot near that clearing felt something watching him from the tree line. Something patient, something ancient, and something that wasn't finished. By morning, the forest had already changed. What had been a wide clearing just hours earlier was now tightly woven with brambles, thick roots, and towering ferns, almost as if the woods were trying to hide the bus again. The sun barely touched the ground. Even the insects were silent, and the air carried a strange smell, metal mixed with something sweet, like old sap or dried blood. The chief investigator, a woman named Rowan, pushed her way forward, ignoring the uneasy glances from her team. She refused to believe a bus could simply vanish again. She refused to accept the officers' descriptions of plant children and breathing vines. But the closer she got, the more her confidence cracked, because 20 feet from where the bus had stood, she found the first clue: a child's shoe, perfectly preserved, perfectly clean, perfectly out of place. She picked it up, expecting dust or decay, but the shoe felt warm, like a child had been wearing it minutes ago. Before she could make sense of it, one of her team called out, "Chief, you're gonna want to see this." Rowan approached a cluster of twisted roots where the man pointed his flashlight. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just thick tangles of vines and branches. But then she noticed a shape beneath them, a smooth surface, yellow paint. Her heart thud, D-E-D. The bus was still here, but the forest had already begun swallowing it again. Vines grew over the metal, thickening by the second. Roots pushed up from the soil, weaving themselves through the windows like fingers dragging prey underground. And the front of the bus, the front looked like it was sinking, as if the earth itself was pulling it down inch by inch, but none of that terrified her as much as what she saw next. Handprints on the glass, dozens of them. Small, tiny, child-sized, and they weren't dusty. They weren't faded. They were fresh. She stepped closer, her breath catching. The prints were smeared downward, like someone had been inside, pressing, sliding, trying to escape. And in the center window, directly at eye level, a single sentence had been written into the fog: "We can hear you." The officers stepped back, hands on their weapons. Rowan swallowed hard, forcing herself closer to the window. Her voice trembled, but she managed to speak. Is someone inside?" The forest answered before any human could. A whisper, faint, airy, coming from everywhere at once. "Stay." Some of her men bolted toward the tree line. 2 fell to the ground, covering their ears. Rowan's flashlight flickered violently, then shut off completely. Darkness swept around her like a cold wave. She forced the flashlight back on, and the handprints were gone. But the bus door was opened at just a crack, just enough to invite someone in. Rowan stepped back, sealed the area. No one goes inside. But before her order could be carried out, something scraped from within the bus. A soft dragging sound, then another, then a third, slow, uneven, like feet or something pretending to have feet, moving toward the entrance. One officer shouted, "Chief, step back." And then the door slowly creaked open wider, wider. until the dark interior sat exposed like a gaping mouth. There was no movement, no light, only a cold draft smelling faintly of old notebooks and damp soil. Then something slid into view. Not a child. Not an adult. Not anything meant to walk this earth. A shape of vines and bone, fused together like the forest had built a person from memory. The face was nothing more than a skull wrapped in moss. An empty socket stared straight ahead, but that's not what made the team freeze. The thing wore a school uniform. Crumpled, dirty, but unmistakable, and hanging from its wrist was a bracelet, a beaded one, with letters spelling a name that had been on the missing list for 22 years. Lily, before anyone could react. The creature lifted its head and spoke. Not with its own voice, it didn't have one, but with the voice of a little girl, echoing from deep within the forest, overlapping like it had been played again and again until distorted. Help us. We can't leave. The vines tightened around its limbs, jerking it back into the darkness like a puppet pulled by unseen strings. The door slammed shut so hard it shook the earth. Silence. No one moved. Rowan finally whispered, "This forest isn't keeping them captive." She swallowed, tears burning her eyes. It's keeping them alive. And somewhere deeper in the woods, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of children singing, but the song wasn't cheerful. It was slowed out, haunting. Wrong. A lullaby twisted by something ancient and hungry. The singing drifted through the trees like a cold mist, soft at first, almost gentle, as if carried on the breeze. But the longer Rowan listened, the more wrong it felt. The rhythm was slow, dragging, broken in places like tiny voices trying to remember a song they hadn't sung in decades. A veteran officer whispered, "Chief, those are children's voices." Rowan didn't answer. She couldn't, because something inside her, something she couldn't explain, recognized the melody. Not from her own childhood, but from a field trip safety video schools used to play in the late 90s. A song the class of '99 would have known by heart. She stepped back, heart pounding. If the forest was singing, it was singing their memories. Branches rustled, not from wind, but from movement. Leaves trembled in tall swaths, as if something massive was shifting between them. Something that didn't walk upright, something that moved low, fast, silent. The officers aimed their lights toward the sound. Nothing. A shadow darted from one tree to another. Then another. Too quick to follow, too many to count. Rowan hissed. Everyone fall back slowly. But the forest didn't want slow. The singing snapped off instantly. The silence slammed down like a door locking shut. Then came the sound that would haunt all of them forever. Footsteps, thousands of them. Light, fast. Child dash like. Running. Toward them. But around them, circling. And closing. One officer screamed, "They're surrounding us," and fired a warning shot into the trees. The echo cracked through the forest like lightning, and then everything stopped. Footsteps, the rustling, even the air, still. Dead. Rowan lifted her hand slowly, motioning the team to stand close. She could feel the trees pressing in, as if the forest itself was leaning forward, listening. Then she noticed it, dozens of tiny lights flickering between the branches. At first she thought they were fireflies, until one floated closer, illuminating a face pressed between two trees. A child's face. Pale. Still. Eyes hollow, like puppets painted on wood. Then more faces appeared. Dozens. Hundreds. Children peering from behind trunks, branches, roots, all wearing faint outlines of school uniforms, moss-stained and torn. Their skin wasn't skin. It was bark, wood, leaves, as if the forest itself had shaped their features. One stepped forward, a small boy missing one shoe. his head tilted with unnatural stiffness, his joints creaking like old timber. He opened his mouth to speak, but instead, the forest spoke through him. A deep, echoing voice layered with 100 whispers. "You found the bus." Rowan felt her knees weaken. "Where are the children?" she demanded, though her voice cracked. The figure blinked slowly and bark shifted where his eyelids should be. "Here." Rowan's breath trembled. "No, the real children." "What happened to them?" The forest replied, "They stayed." The officers looked at each other in horror. Another figure stepped forward, this one taller, a girl with vines braided through her hair. She raised a hand slowly. Leaves crackled from her fingertips. "We tried to leave," the forest whispered through her. "But the forest remembers what enters, and what it remembers, it keeps." Rowan shook her head, stepping backward. "No, you're not them. You're imitations, copies, echoes." The figures all tilted their heads in unison, slow, unnatural, synchronized. The girl stepped closer. "We were not copies at first." Behind her, something massive moved. A shadow taller than the trees, branches twisting like limbs, roots shifting like ribs. A shape that resembled a body, long, towering, made entirely of roots and earth. A creature the forest had grown from the remains of memories, voices, and fear. The forest tightened. Its eyes opened, two glowing hollows that pulsed like embers. Every child in the woods turned to face it, bowing their heads in reverence. Rowan whispered, "What? What is that?" The small boy stepped closer, his movements jerky like a puppet pulled on invisible threads. "The forest protects its secrets. We were lost, so it found us and made us part of itself." The Titan took a single step forward, and the ground trembled. The air thickened with the scent of soil and sap. Rowan's team aimed their weapons, but she threw her arm out. "No, guns won't do anything to that." The Titan lowered its massive head, the trunk-like face inches above the bus behind them. Vines reached toward the metal shell, curling into windows and doors. Rowan realized the horrifying truth. The forest wasn't just keeping the children. It was growing them, replacing them, rebuilding them, feeding on their memory. One officer whispered shakily, "Chief, we have to go." But the forest heard him. The child figures raised their arms. Every branch above them shook like a warning. The Titan's eyes flashed brighter. And the forest said, through 1,000 voices, "No one leaves." Rowan's breath stopped. The vines beneath their feet began to move, slowly at first, then snapping upward like living snakes. Her heart raced. Her pulse thundered. Her mind screamed, and she realized one thing. The forest didn't want them to join the children. It wanted to make room for new ones. The vines surged upward like living ropes, twisting around boots, ankles, legs, not to pull, not to strangle, but to hold, as if the forest were deciding which ones it wanted to keep. Rowan hacked them away with her knife, every slice releasing a burst of damp, earthy scent. Her team struggled, slipping, shouting, stumbling backward, but the forest wasn't rushing. It didn't need to. It moved with the slow confidence of something ancient. An undefeated. The child-shaped figures stepped closer. Their hollow eyes glowed faintly now, like tiny lanterns in the dusk. Each step they took made the ground quiver, not with weight. They were almost weightless, but with intention. The small boy with one shoe stopped only a few feet from Rowan, his head tilted again, and his wooden jaw creaked as he opened it. The forest's voice came out deeper this time, older, resonating through the trees. "You shouldn't have found the bus." Rowan swallowed hard, forcing her trembling legs to hold steady. "We didn't come to take anything. We didn't come to hurt anyone. We just want answers." The boy took another stiff step forward. The forest gives answers only to those it chooses to remember. The Titan behind them shifted, impossibly tall. impossibly silent for something so massive. Its root-like arms curled downward, brushing against the roof of the bus like a parent laying a hand on a sleeping child. One of Rowan's officers whispered, "Chief, what do we do?" Rowan stared into the glowing hollows of the Titan's eyes. "We don't run," she said. "Running means being chased. We talk." It was a lie. She was terrified, but fear was already cracking her team apart. She couldn't let it break them completely. She stepped forward, toward the child figures, toward the Titan, toward the heart of an impossible nightmare. "What happened to the real children?" she asked, her voice steady despite the quake in her chest. The forest hesitated. Leaves rustled overhead, not from wind, but from thought. Then they stayed. Rowan shook her head. "What does that mean?" A soft sigh swept through the forest like an exhale of earth. The forest remembered them wrong. Her breath caught. The boy raised an arm, stiff, bark cracking as he moved, and pointed toward the sinking bus behind them. It tried to keep them, tried to keep their voices, tried to keep their shapes. Rowan's eyes widened as understanding slammed into her chest. You aren't them. You're what the forest thinks they were." The child nodded once, the motion unsettlingly smooth. Memory fades, so the forest made its own. The officers beside her trembled. One whispered a prayer. Another gripped his radio like it could anchor him. Rowan steadied herself. If the forest kept the children, where are they now? Silence. Then the Titan shifted, roots groaning under its weight. Slowly, painfully slowly, it turned, revealing something behind it. A mound of earth, large, oval, covered in woven branches. A cocoon. Rowan's heart plummeted. Vines parted at the top of the cocoon, revealing shapes inside. Small shapes, still shapes. Dozens of them, not grown from moss, not carved from bark, real, children, their clothing faded. Their bodies thin, preserved in a way that should have been impossible. Not decayed, not alive, but suspended, as if they had fallen asleep 22 years ago and never woken up. Rowan staggered backward, tears burning her eyes. "Oh my God, they're still here." The forest's voice shivered through the trees. "They are dreaming. They have been dreaming since they entered." Rowan lifted her trembling hand. "Why didn't you let them go home?" The small boy stepped closer, his voice a trembling echo, "Because home forgets." The Titan lowered its head. Branches dripped with dew that looked uncomfortably like tears. "The world forgets its children. The forest does not." Rowan choked on a breath. "You took them." The forest replied, "We kept them safe." The ground trembled, not threatening, but sorrowful. Like the forest itself mourned the misunderstanding. Rowan stared at the cocoon of children, a cradle made of roots and time. "Can they wake up?" she whispered. The answer came softly, almost tenderly. "Only if you promise to remember." Rowan's throat tightened. "I will. I swear it. I'll tell their story. I won't let the world forget again." The child figures tilted their heads, listening to her heartbeat, her fear, her sincerity. The Titan took one massive step back, clearing the path to the cocoon. Roots loosened, branches uncoiled. The mound slowly opened, like a flower blooming inside. The real children stirred for the first time in 22 years. Eyes fluttered, hands twitched. Soft, weak breaths trembled through the air. They weren't lost, they weren't dead, just waiting. The forest's final words echoed through the clearing. "Take them home." The child-shaped forest creatures stepped back, their shapes dissolving into leaves and bark. They fluttered away on the breeze like forgotten memories returning to the soil. The Titan bowed its massive head once, a gesture of farewell, then stepped into the woods and vanished. its body unraveling into roots that sank beneath the earth. Rowan approached the children, tears running down her face. "Hey, it's okay," she whispered. "We're here now. We're taking you home." The first child opened his eyes. Weak. Faded. But alive. Is the trip over?" he whispered. Rowan nodded, her voice breaking. "Yeah, it's over." Her team carried them out of the clearing as the forest slowly stitched the earth close behind them, sealing the bus, the memories, and the secrets back into silence. The forest had returned what it had kept. It held them for decades. But it never harmed them. It simply refused to let them be forgotten. And to this day, if you walk deep into that forest, deeper than any map dares show, you might still hear faint singing. Not haunting, not sad. Peaceful. Like a lullaby sung by someone finally ready to let go. The class of '99 finally went home, and the forest finally slept.